Hello, welcome to a new video. It is time for my 2024 stats. I'll give you my 2025 goals. So it was an amazing reading year for me. I read, now, when I tell you the total number of books, I'm going to explain why I'm so angry. And it's Goodreads' fault. So I have read 271 books in 2024. The reason I'm angry is because I thought I'd read 270. I thought I'd rounded it perfectly. So I looked, when I finished all my Christmas books in December, I looked and it said I had 266 books. And I was like, that's amazing. I'm currently reading The Brothers Hawthorne, and then I've got 3 more Mighty 9 graphic novels to read. That's going to take me to 270. But then my planner wasn't matching Goodreads. My planner was adding up. So we have the monthly reading stats and I added them all up and it come up to 271, and I was like, excuse me, what's happened? So I went through my Goodreads reading challenge 2024 and checked every single book off against this. It hadn't logged my finish date on the Wicked Villains short stories that I read at the beginning of December. So I've actually read 271, and I don't have time or energy today on New Year's Eve to read 4 books, not even 4 graphic novels or mangas. I don't have the energy. So now I have to have a really weird number. I like my year to finish on either a 0 or a 5. And I now can't. And I know it's such an insignificant issue, but it just doesn't look right. For me, it doesn't look right. So I'm a bit annoyed. And by a bit, I mean a lot. But 271 is incredible. The most I've ever read in a year is 200. So if you look back at my Goodreads over the years, so I started doing the Goodreads challenge in 2016, where I had a goal of 20 books and I read 25. 2017, I challenged myself and I put 30. I read 36. Again, the 6. I don't know what happened here. 2018, I set my goal as 70 and I read 88. Again, I don't know what was happening. 2019, I set it as 100 and I read 125. And then 2020 was when I started setting it as 80 books, because I was like, I feel like 80 is so easily achievable for me, but then it takes the pressure off of actually trying to get that, because I can hit 80 on a bad year. Easy. And the first year I set 80. Now, it was lockdown. I read 181. It was the same issue where one book hadn't logged my finish date. And I went back and I was like, I'm really confused about this. And it was because it hadn't logged my finish date. So that's why I had an odd number there. 2021, again, for the rest of these, I've set it as 80 every year. So 2021, I read 200. 2022, I read 200. 2023, I read 200. And then 2024, I've read 271. I am so happy with this. The thing is, next year, I did say, oh, I'm going to try not to read as many books in 2024 because I want to do this and I want to do that. It didn't work. And you know what? I wasn't even trying. I was just so on it with my reading. And the way I see it, if I want to read, why would I stop myself? Why would I be like, oh no, you can't read today. You've been reading a lot lately. Stop. Why would I do that? If I've got the motivation to read, I'm gonna read. I was having a great time, and I've had a great time, because if you look at my ratings, so I only had 7 DNFs through the entire year. 7 DNFs, and a few of them were because they had triggers in. The rest were I just wasn't enjoying them. So I think 7 DNFs out of like 271 books plus 7 DNFs is really good. But I only had 3 2 stars, 17 3 stars, and then 4 stars was 89, which means 5 stars was 162. I feel like I very much have grasped what sort of books I like, and I don't force myself to read books. Well, I do kind of force myself to read books that I'm not sure if I'm going to like, but we're not going to judge. We listen, we don't judge. But my total number of pages for the year 98,724. Like, that's insane. I listened to 830 hours of audiobooks. Audiobooks were on it this year. I'm actually so happy. And like, I did a lot of like mixed media, but if I look at my, I've got my planner in one side and my core pile the next. So physical only books, I read 49. Audiobook only, I read 13. Ebook only, I read 38. And then mixed media was made up the rest of that with like either physical and audiobook or ebook and audiobook. So I did a lot. It was a lot. Book length, I read mostly books between 350 and 400 pages, closely followed by 300 to 350 and 150 to 200, which is the mangas that I've read. Like, I read a lot of Attack on Titan this year. I read like a couple of Spy Family this year. I read Something is Killing the Children, which actually that might have been over 200, I'm not sure. But yeah, I read quite a lot of manga this year, so that makes sense. So book formats, I read mostly like full length novels, but I read like 40 manga. Most of them were Attack on Titan. I read like 14 graphic novels, and then the rest was like novellas and novels. So that's pretty good. Genres, so I read across 8 different genres because I very much like to keep to set genres. So my genres are fantasy, I read 123. Fantasy is still my most read. Still my most read. Closely followed by romance, I read 45. Next up was dystopian, I read 38. Now this is mostly Attack on Titan, but then I also read a few dystopians, like the dinosaur books I read. I put them down as dystopian. And I read The Dark Mirror, which is dystopian. So dystopia, I put dystopia separately to sci-fi because I feel like it deserves its own genre. Next up was sci-fi, so it's like my Star Wars books and things like that. There was 23 of those. Next, oddly, was horror. I read 17 horror books this year, which baffles me. I don't know how. Then that's closely followed by adventure. So adventure tends to be my middle grades that are things like Delivery to the Lost City, which is the 3rd Train to Impossible Places book. I class that as adventure. What other ones are adventure? All the like Critical Role stuff I class as adventure because technically it could be fantasy, but I class it more as adventure rather than fantasy because it's D&D. It's adventure. So things like that are adventure. And then tying in last place for my genres is mystery and historical fiction at 8 apiece. Historical fiction, I am quite shocked I've read 8, considering I don't really do historical, but I really enjoyed the historical fiction that I did read this year. It's a certain type of historical that I need to read, clearly. A mystery is like anything that's like thriller, crime, mystery, anything like that. So I read like 8 of them. I do think those totals include my DNFs, which is fine. So yeah, I do sort of generalize so that I only have 8 genres, but that's fine. That's just how I do it. What other ones? So publication year is an interesting one. I don't tend to look at my publication year until I get to these stats. So if we look, I read 44, the most amount of books I read, 44 had a 2024 release date. 43 had a 2022 release date. 37 had a 2023 release date, and then everything else was pre-2022, which I think is pretty decent. I have been reading a lot of like my backlist, which I'm really proud of myself for. I have done so well on my series tracker this year. I can't remember if that's one of my little charts, but This is an interesting one to look at. So I only reread 20 books this year, which means the rest were all first time reads. I'm really proud of myself for that, because I do like to reread. I don't ever want to have a year where I don't reread anything, because I love rereading. So I love rereading my Ali Hazelwood. I have really enjoyed over the last couple of years rereading my Sarah J Maas books. The last year and a bit, I've really enjoyed rereading them and things like that. So I'm never going to stop rereading my books, because the way I see it, if you love a book and you want to read it more than once, you do it. You do you. I only 63 of my books were standalones, and some of them I think were my DNFs. 215 were part of a series. I did start a few series, I will say that. However, there are some series that I started and finished this year. So I started the Inheritance Games series and I finished that this year. I started the Luminaries series this year. I finished it this year. So there is a few series that I've started and finished them within this year, which I think is pretty cool. How I got it, 153 of the books were books that I already owned. That is amazing. 21 were arcs, which will be e-arcs. Yeah, they'll be e-arcs, apart from The Nightmare Before Christmas, which was a physical arc, but I think the rest were e-arcs. I got 60 books from the library. I'm trying to use my library as well as use my own physical library. I borrowed 12 off of friends, which I feel like friends is the wrong word, because, you know, most of them are from Ash. I have borrowed a few from my mum. And then gifted was 31. So I am reading books that I am being gifted, which I'm proud of for that. Oh, this is a good series stat. I forgot to, when I talked about series. Series started this year was 60. Sequels read this year was 107. And series finished this year was 48. Go me. I'm very happy with that. That's a really good number. I read 156 different authors this year, which is interesting. I'm quite happy with that. This is an insane pie chart. Like, I read 13 Sarah J Maas, which makes sense, because I did the Maas along for 12 months. But I read House of Flame and Shadow in the same month as I read one of the Throne of Glass books. You can tell I read 31 volumes of Attack on Titan with that green section there. 10 Ali Hazelwood. Yeah, I reread a lot of Ali Hazelwood as well as her new stuff. I read Bride 3 times this year, like in 2024. I have no shame. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, this graph is ridiculous and I love it. I can't think of any other stats that I wanna talk about. I mean, my average ratings went from, I think the lowest average rating was 4.2 for the month, and the highest was 4.7, which I think is pretty darn good. This is a cool one. I haven't quite finished it, but I used this as my days read. So if it's just got the lines through, it means I read on that day. The full block colour means I didn't read at all, which I had 2 months. So in June and October, I had no days where I didn't read anything. December, I had quite a few because I didn't read much in Disney. And then I had a few days when I come back where I didn't read as much, or didn't read anything rather. My 24 books in 2024, I technically failed because there was one book I didn't read. I DNF'd 2, but the rest were like 4 or 5 stars. And then there was one I didn't read, which was Court of Lions, which is a sequel. And it's also a book I've got an e-arc for. I didn't have the motivation to read an ebook only, and I can't get the audiobook in the UK, which was a shame. The A to Z challenge I did not complete, unfortunately. I didn't have a J book, a V, an X or a Y, which that sucks a little bit, but it's fine. I did complete my 2024 fully booked reading challenge. I read a book for every single one of them. I read a book for all of the, on the cover, I've got to make it pretty and colourful, but I've got it written in pencil. I read a book for all of those, and then the Reading Rainbow, I read everything. I did not complete the genre reading challenge or the read through the ages. So for genre, I didn't read a non-fiction, which is the only one I didn't read, so that's pretty cool. And then read for the ages, I didn't read a book set between 1870s and 1880s or 1930s to 1940s, which is a shame, but it's fine. And then the around the world I find really difficult to do. So I read a North America, South America, Europe, Ireland, Middle East, Asia, and Australia, New Zealand, and Antarctic, Arctic. Technically I did, because part of Goldilocks in the flashback is set in one of those poles, which I think is pretty cool. So the only ones I didn't manage to read is Russia or Africa, which is a shame. I'm going to try and be better next year with that and maybe plan ahead of time. So yeah, I did pretty well on those challenges. I did pretty well. Readathons. Now I keep track of the readathons I did. So in January I did none. In February I did Series TBR-a-thon and I smashed it. March I did Marvel-a-thon and I think I smashed it. April I did Tomes and Treasures. Round 1. Was it round 1? Yeah, I did Tomes and Treasures. May I did May the TBR Be With You, which is obviously one of mine, and then the Vampire Diaries readathon. June I did none, I had a break. July I did Sixathon, which was one of mine, and I did Magical Hopathon. August I did Series TBR-a-thon again, which again I smashed it. September I did nothing. October I did Spookopoly-thon. November I did round 2 of Tomes and Treasures, and December I did Crimbo Bingo. So I did pretty well on my readathons. I am not going to go through my favourites and worst, most disappointing, because I'm going to do a separate video for that. But there was a few. Oh, another readathon I did, which is at the back. I did Gem's Roadhouse readathon and I completed that. And then I also did the Little Inkling Romance Trope Bingo, which I completed all of those. So that was fun. So now let's look at goals. So first off, we're gonna look at this was my NetGalley. My NetGalley for next year, I'm going to show you what I've got compared to this year. So when I started this year, throughout the year, that's almost 2 whole pages of books. This is my NetGalley I'm going into 2025 with. I am so happy of how much I've got my NetGalley down. Like, I've smashed that and I'm very happy with that. So now the only thing there is to do is go through my goals. So my goals for 2024 were read at least 80 books. Well, I did that. Continue uploading twice a week on YouTube. I've continued doing that. I don't think that I've missed a Monday vlog or a Wednesday video. Continue reading sprints once a week. I have mostly managed to do this. I've mostly managed to do, if I haven't been able to do the Sunday, I've done like one of the days in the week. There has been a few weeks where I haven't, but I've mostly done that. Catch up on NetGalley e-arcs and writing the reviews. Well, I do have some reviews to write, which I want to do today, but I mean, I've just showed you my NetGalley comparison. I'm quite proud of that. Keep track of books I own. I have been keeping track of my spreadsheet. I do have to update the stuff I got in December, but apart from that, I've been keeping track of the books I own. Read ebooks and owned books. I've definitely done that. I have dropped my physical TBR. So this doesn't include the books that I have read and then received in December. But at the start of December, my physical owned TBR was 349 books. So I'm very, very happy with that. I think I can safely say I have been reading ebooks and owned books, or at least owned books. I have read quite a few ebooks, to be fair. So I'll give that. Another goal was to finish or catch up or continue series. I finished a lot of series and I have continued a lot of series, so I've definitely done that. And then catch up on Critical Role. Now, this was too ambitious. This was too ambitious. I am currently, my next episode I need to watch is episode 70 of Campaign 2, which I haven't got as far into Campaign 2 as I would have liked, but that's okay. I have read 271 books in 2024. So that was my 2024 goals. My 2025 one, I've moved around some stuff. So read 80 books again. I'm always going to set my goal as 80 because, like I said earlier, I know I can do it without any stress. I've kept my continue uploading twice a week on YouTube and reading sprints once a week because I like having that as a goal. I've changed my NetGalley one slightly. I want to fully catch up on my pre-2025 releases and writing the reviews. So I've been pretty good at writing the reviews. The only reviews I haven't written are the books that I've read in December, because I've read quite a few of my NetGalley e-arcs in December. So I've got to write those reviews, but I want to fully catch up on all the books that were released before 2025 because I am a little bit behind on those ones still. I want to continue keeping track of the books I own and my series tracker. I've been really enjoying my series tracker. I want to read some more of my ebooks because I feel like the only ebooks I tend to gravitate towards is my NetGalley e-arcs, and I have other ebooks as well. And I also want to try and keep below 350 on my physical TBR. I'm not going to give myself an unrealistic goal of getting below 300. It could happen. I don't know. But I want to make sure I keep below 350. That's the goal. That is the goal. I want to carry on finishing and continue with series I've started. That's a standard one. For Critical Role, I have been a little bit kinder to myself. I'm not going to say, oh, I want to have caught up. I want to finish Campaign 2 by the end of 2025. Bell is barking. That's the goal. Finish Campaign 2 at least. If I start Campaign 3, amazing, great, perfect. But I want to at least have finished Campaign 2. I'm about halfway through it now, so that's something at least. I think I can do that. That's the goal. And then my final goal for 2025 is I want to read at least one non-fiction. I was going to say like 6, so it's like one every other month. But honestly, I don't know if there's that many non-fictions I want to read. I don't have a huge amount. The non-fictions I read are also just autobiographies. So yeah, I want to read at least one non-fiction. And then I've also got obviously all of the little challenges. I want to try and complete all of those. But we'll see. This video was a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be. But that's fine. It's a stats and goals video. What do you expect? I hope you have enjoyed watching this. I love watching other people's stats video. So I hope you've enjoyed mine. But Happy New Year again. I don't know when this video is going up, but I'm filming this on New Year's Eve. But Happy New Year anyway. It's going up in January, that's the main thing. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.